am Christa Wagner. I am a tattoo artist based out of St. Louis. I started tattooing about 3 years ago, and I'm a single mom. I've got 3 kids.
Awesome.
And yeah, just kind of finding my way through the entrepreneur journey and recreating my life.
That's awesome. So what was it that attracted you about, tattooing?
To be honest, I had never thought about tattooing prior to 3 years ago. I've always been artistic and I loved drawing, especially as a kid. But it wasn't until I was getting a tattoo in 2021 and it was the first one I could see like being done. It was here on my forearm, and it spoke to me. It called to me, and I became just obsessed with the idea.
Have you always drawn or?
Yeah, I drew a lot as a kid. I was very creative. I liked to write, and I kind of lost touch of that, I guess. Just growing up, I was a teen mom. So I had a lot of, I was very young to be a mom, and I had a lot of trauma in my 20s, navigating just abusive relationships and, supporting her on my own. So it definitely, that session kind of brought me back to my art, and it felt like basically like coming home to myself. So
that's to say, like coming
cool.
home. Finding that thing. Yeah.
It's like being gone after a really long day or a long trip. And then, when you get to kick off your shoes, and it's just like the best feeling. Yeah. Best feeling.
That's awesome. It's really cool when I think sometimes people in life and people in this world will see people go one direction, another direction, and then, oh, they're back to that. Oh, okay. Like they can't make up their mind, but sometimes we veer off and then realize like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be.
Absolutely.
That's how it always has been with martial arts with me. I've always been in it, but I'll pull away a little bit, do some art, and I'm like, boom, I'm back. I'm like, okay, this is, like you said, it's home.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it was during like just a healing, like self-discovery, process too. So it was kind of, I think, a way of me recognizing like my true self and my authentic self, which I think I got lost over the years. So yeah,
life does
kind of brought everything full circle. Yeah.
Life tends to do that, but that's awesome that you found that and you've been just thriving at it,
Yes.
But when you pour your all into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I hit the gas pedal and I haven't stopped.
Yeah. Before we started, you're saying like you watch podcasts or tutorial, like you're just constantly learning and engulfing yourself in it.
A lot of times while I'm tattooing, I'll be listening to tattooing podcasts or, things, or in my car, or I just try to, immerse myself in it, or, it's just art in general, self-improvement, growth, all of that.
That's awesome. And that's really, I think, what a lot of entrepreneurs, when they hit that vibe, when they hit that spot where they're really going, is when they do start to pour into themselves, into the learning, into the podcast, into the books, into that just diving into bettering themselves and learning more, is when everything really starts to take off. I think when you hit that spot where you can, okay, I've got to focus on me to go forward, or to, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's the first time in my life that I have poured into me. Before I was always pouring into others, or, taking care of my kids. And so it's been like finding balance between, I can be a mom and take care of others and pour into others, but also making sure I'm pouring back into me.
Yeah. And that's a very important balance to have. Have you found a lot just more success or more? Yeah, success. Everybody rates success differently. So just more, that presence, that better life presence by doing that. More Absolutely. Balance.
Yeah. It's been, I feel like I'm still trying to navigate it. It's hard.
Every day.
But yeah, I feel like it's just been trial and error, really, like just figuring out what works, what doesn't, constantly looking at things and feedback from clients, and being accountable too, like for my own, my own things, and then just adjusting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and when you're pouring into yourself, when you're bringing in that content and you're listening to books, listening to podcasts, doing things that better you, do you notice, like I always notice I feel better. I'm more more zoned in on what I'm doing at that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I've had to kind of cancel out like the outside, like outside noise, and just kind of being in a phase of like a hermit phase almost to work on myself. But yeah, it feels good. It feels right. Which I think is what I always try to go back to, is what feels good to me and what speaks to me, and listening to my intuition on that.
Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are like that because they pour out so much. They do it like you said, a hermit. Like I always tell people all the time, like, oh, there's this going on Friday night or that. I'm not interested. I'm with people all day long. I talk to you. I've got my full, now I just want to hang out with my family, or I just want to be alone in my thoughts. Like I've been trying to really dial in this year my morning routine to really get my day set and focused and be disciplined on it, and not let, if a customer needs this or that, like trying to really set boundaries in the morning.
Yes.
Because I notice a big difference in my day. Like you said, I think we talked when I was in getting tattoo work from you. Like you've got such a long drive to the studio. You've got time to get those podcasts and get that content, that life enriching content in.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got about 45 minutes. So
that's perfect.
Yeah. And I think it's good because it gets me in the right mindset too before I tattoo. I try to be really intentional during my sessions. I view tattooing as, it's an energy exchange. It's a really powerful one. So I know if I'm bringing, my extra baggage or whatever into a session, that it's, I don't want that to be transferred over into their tattoo. So yeah.
Well, just they're all over experience. I think there's two types of things. You get the people that just get that stick I want that flash right here, who's cheap. There's that person, and there's the other people that do connect, that do say, I want this, and here's, and they enjoy that time with the tattoo artist.
Absolutely.
And, they enjoy that art. My kids, we were going down to the pool this summer. We're going to the pool, and I had a long sleeve on. Like, what are you doing? I was like, do you know how much? I was like, they're like, somebody, I think it was one of the kids made this. Well, maybe it wasn't. Somebody made a comment about, well, you just spent a lot of money on your tattoos. I'm like, no, this is like artwork that people have done. And, I was scrolling Facebook the other day. I was like, oh, it's a badass tat. And I realized Wally had shared this one from 2 years ago when he did it. I'm like, hey, that's my arm. I was excited. I was like, oh man, because I love his fonts.
Yeah, he's a great artist. And I love watching his stuff.
Oh man. And I just was excited. So I'm like, oh, it's dope. Oh wait, that's mine. But out of respect for the artist, I have a hanging in my house of my back that Jason Reynolds did. And I love it. It's funny because people be at the house like, is that your back? I'm like, yeah, I can't see it. So he made me a picture. It's pretty cool. But it's out of that respect for you guys that have done that artwork, people laugh about, because of the microphone and everything. I'm like, no, but it's here. When I'm cleaning up, when I'm shaving, I see it and it's my reminder. Yes. I like that stuff. I like those visuals, but that connection you make with that artist is important. And for Absolutely. Your role and what you do, being right and being centered and being there that day is probably, it's great that it means something to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like that's attributed a lot to my success so far. It's just being able to connect with my clients. I think that's what people are looking for, in general, these days. I think a lot of things are virtual, and the internet is taking over, and I think as humans we just want to connect.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's what this has become for me. I absolutely leave here energized. Today I've got several podcasts, but because you're making that connection with that other human, you're having a conversation with them, you're engaging on a level that we don't do anymore. Like you said, everything's virtual.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And
virtual or like surface level. So yeah.
Very, very much so. And, you know, when you have someone in your chair on your table for hours at a time, you get to know them.
Oh yeah, definitely. And, you know, they're very vulnerable, like you're in pain. So we have some pretty cool conversations, and yeah.
I never really looked at it that way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a really cool connection too. And I would say you probably feel the same way I do with this, with like everything in the media sometimes and all this stuff. And then when you actually have real connections with people, you're like, life is good.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's not that the world is burning, that so many people make it out to be on shorts and reels and everything else. It's, oh, this is cool. Yeah. I've had several conversations with people that have so many different beliefs than I do on things, but we have real conversations when you sit and connect. It's addicting. It's a great feeling.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, we're all so different, which I think is what I love with connecting with so many different people, is to hear how they think and what they believe and hear their stories. And, you know, it'd be pretty boring if we all had the same beliefs and we all agreed and saw things the same way. So yeah.
Everybody's had a different life experience. And I think that's one of the things that, like, I've ran into so many people that met you during your apprenticeship, that knew you at the other studio, that have been, God, I love her. She's so great. Abby out there follows your Instagram. I said your name and she's like, oh, I follow. Yeah, she's here like that. But that genuine, that comes through in your work and what you do and your love of what you do. And that's a big thing for people these days, because it is missing so much.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think it's something I hear a lot within the industry too, is like, you know, somebody will come in and be like, oh, I got this tattoo. And I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. I love it. And they're like, yeah, the tattoo's great, but, you know, the experience wasn't. So it like kind of it just like taints that whole, you know, experience and the art of it, which is unfortunate. So
it is, but it's something you have to think about too. Like, you know, there's been different stories I've heard of famous artists that I've known, people that have worked with them. That's like, they're an ass. I was like, cool, noted. Don't want their artwork.
Yeah.
You know, when I was down there with you, the gal in the room, Heidi.
Yep.
She's so cool.
She is very cool.
Like, I was like, all right, cool. I could spend a lot of time at Tattoo by her because she is so super
Everybody,
cool.
I mean, all the artists at Alchemy, and there's, I think, over 20 of us there.
Wow.
Everybody is just, they're such good people and they're so awesome.
Yeah. And that vibe means so much in a shop like that. I believe with the pain people go through when getting a tattoo and the emotions that are tied into them. I mean,
absolutely.
There's so many people that have such deeply rooted, you know, emotions for their tattoos that it does matter, that vibe in the shop, I would say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like that's something that people notice right away, is the vibe. It's really welcoming, and just, it's something I noticed right away too, which is kind of when I was like, all right, this is the place.
It fits.
Yeah.
No, and I even have that on my website with the Taekwondo school. Like, you got to go there and like go to martial arts schools, feel them out. I may not be the guy. Like, I may not be your instructor. We may not vibe. Like, I'm totally cool with that. Your goals may be, or how you want to, you know, what it might not work. So check places out. And that's the same thing. Like, you meet people that work well with you, or you know, when I got one of these up here, I was in Canada, and the dude did a great little tat. Cheap, worked me in. I thanked him. I was really thankful for it, because we ran super behind on stuff, and I effed up the appointment, and the apprentice that was supposed to do it was off. This is the whole thing, and he was great. Didn't talk the entire time. Well, it's when you put the gold in for me. Yeah. He was like, no gold. That was about all we talked. That was about it. I was like, this is really weird. Like, and he did it. It was a nice little tat. Nothing against him. Bedside manner sucked. Like, I was like, cool, very transactional, very boom, boom, done. And I was like, I mean, it is a little, you know, it is what it is. But I was still like, okay, that was really weird. I've never had a tattoo like that. I've never had one that went like that. I was like, wow, this is real. Okay, you're a non-talker. Okay. Cool. Like, I just kept later, I'm like, this sucks, because it was a long day anyways. I was like, you know, random American walks into a Canadian tattoo shop, you think he'd be like, so, you know, like if someone foreign. I've gotten tattoos on in other countries, and they're normally like intrigued. Oh, what are you doing here? Like someone foreign came into you. What's going on?
Just picking their brain and being like, tell me everything you can about
Yeah, it'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
I thought, I was like, I mean, whatever, maybe you don't like America. What I didn't care, but at the same time I was like, okay, this is interesting. Never had this before. Noted. So what, okay, question 2. How many tattoos do you have? Do you know?
I think I've lost count at this point.
That's okay. I was curious. People ask me that and I'm like, I have no clue. I was like, I would have to sit and try to figure it out. And then I was like, well, tattoo sessions or individuals? Cause I got different fingers.
Right.
Like, how do we break it? I just wanted to see.
I think if you can count them, then you don't have enough.
Yes. I remember when we first connected 2 of them and I was like, that's a big deal. They connect now. I was like, wow, from one side of the body to the other. I was like, well, that's pretty dope.
It's very cool. Like the transition of, like the transformation, I think is a very cool thing to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked it. I remember when Jason did that, I was like, oh, that's cool. So do you have any, like, do you still at this period in tattooing, like plan out like, oh, I want this, or I'm still wanting that, or I got a goal of doing this one, or
for my own?
Yeah, for you.
I mean, I plan on being pretty covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, my face will be off limits. Probably won't ever tattoo my chest, but other than that, I plan on being. Yeah. I'm just not really sure yet. I've kind of, now that I've been in the industry and I've gotten to know like all the different styles, and I just love them all so much. But I also never planned on being this heavily tattooed.
Yeah.
I always thought I'd be in the medical field. So I don't know. I'm kind of sometimes I'm like, I want a new canvas. I got new ideas. You see things, you're like, oh, that's so cool, but I can't do that now.
I don't have spot.
Bummer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think I definitely want more, and I've been adding like little by little, but yeah, I think for like the bigger spots, like I've got an arm left, I've got a whole back. I'm kind of deciding on what I want, because I want it to be bigger. I want it all to like connect. So yeah, it just takes a lot of thought.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's where mine's been. It's like when I see something, I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. Well, that's a back piece. My back's done. That won't work. Or that's this. Nope, I already used that. That's fine. So I get it. That's where I'll see different things. I'm like, like I showed you the Archimedes one. I like that design, but I also was like, well, an Archimedes would make a great
right.
I was like, nope,
just really go down the rabbit hole with,
I was like, I'm staying away from the neck. I keep telling everybody, I'm like, I'm staying away from the neck until. And they're like, until what? I'm like, just until. Something's going to happen. And I'm going to be like, hey, Casey, so love you much. Getting the neck, because it will happen at one point, because I love the look of it.
Yes.
I just love it. And I know dudes have had theirs removed. I know people that say they regret it, but man, some random picture popped up the other day of one that was just badass. I was like, wow, that is, I don't know. I think it's just the way it frames the face. I remember seeing when you'd posted, doing yours, like I've always loved that look of the neck, but it is taking, like when I did my hands, I was like, your hands are all done too, right?
Yeah. They are. Yeah.
When I did my hands, I remember being like, maybe let's see how this goes. And then once I did the top of the hand, I was like, shoot, we're doing the fingers now. They look naked. I mean, look at my thumb sometimes. I'm like, yeah, we could put something right there. But I don't think people, and how do you feel about this? But like, do you feel people still, it's like a judging thing? What has your experience has been with that?
Yes and no. I feel like it's changing as a society. I think, it's becoming more accepting and looked at as art and like self-expression, which I love. But I think there is still some stigmas and judgment that happens. I think depending on like the area too, like more, if you're in more of like a city versus, more rural areas, definitely. I mean, even the difference from like, I think, I live in Wentzville. So being out and about in Wentzville versus me being in the city. Well,
well, especially where the shop is, like where your shop's
I
at.
blend
like
right in.
Yeah.
Whereas out here, I kind of stick out a little bit more. But I think there is still a little bit of a stigma. So yeah, especially like when you start tattooing like fingers and hands and necks and faces, things like that.
The conversations I've had with people, I don't think I'll notice, like if I go to a bid or if I very randomly at the Taekwondo school, like I was looking at a picture the other day, I'm like, I'm surprised more people don't, because I'm working with their kids, like don't question it. Because like I obviously know I don't have prison tattoos, but the unknowing person that doesn't like dive into the world of tattoos doesn't understand like the look differences. But I'm surprised. Sometimes I'll show up on bids and people will be like, so how's it going? And they'll like, I'm like, my eyes are up here. Cause I'm like, I could catch them like, Jesus, is his hands tattooed? Like I'll watch them like look down and you could see it. I notice it there. I don't really notice that at the academy, but I feel like a lot of times, cause I'll start conversations. If I notice them staring at it, I'll be like, oh yeah,
absolutely.
This is, blah, blah, blah. And then a lot of times the conversations will go to, I wish I could do that.
I was going to say,
that's what I get a lot of.
A lot of times when people are staring, I think it's that they're either like admiring, the work or, I hear from a lot of people that they would love to have tattoos, but they like can't commit to something, or they're like, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, I'm like, that's why ADHD is great. I just fucking go for
you
it.
just
like,
do it.
Just impulse control sucks. Like it's great because I've had people ask me like, how'd you do? I'm like, I just did it.
Got a bad day, just
it just was like, you know what I need right now? A tattoo. I realized the other day my last one was when you did that. That's the last time I've had a tattoo, and I was like, oof, that's the longest I've went like 7 years without getting ink. I'm like, the brain's churning. Sure, if you come in, I'm like, look at this picture. I'm like, my brain already started. I'm like, all right.
You start to get that itch.
Well, now I started shaving my head the other day. I'm like, I'm like, oh, my mother will shoot me. I was like, plus I can only imagine how
the pain
bad that feels. Because have you done a head tattoo?
I have not.
Have you seen? No. Have you been there when anyone's? I would bet money they would bleed really bad too.
I've seen one be done, and it didn't look like it was a good time.
Yeah, no. My only experience is watching them be done on like TV, Ink Master or whatever, and it looked.
And I think too, just the vibration, like.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
That's got to be. Just a weird rattly. Yeah.
Yeah, that would. I didn't think about that because I remember when I was getting my chest done, like when I hit that sternum, you could feel it. I didn't think about that on your head. Like that would echo through your head. Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a headache.
That's what I hear a lot from like when I tattoo behind the ears. Mostly it's like the pain was fine. It's just like a really weird.
Well, your skull. So like I'm deaf in this ear. So when I go in for hearing tests, they'll put a thing on that beeps here. And they'll flip it around back here. And when they put it on this bone, I can hear the beeps because the vibration through it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So because I was looking at getting a hearing aid that would go here to bypass because I don't have an eardrum. And that's when you said that about the vibration, I'm like, oh, as much as that comes through, like if that's what they're using to amplify it, I can only imagine that tattoo gun.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom.
Which I think is something people don't always think about. How could you know ahead of time?
Yeah, no, I didn't think about that. That would be crazy. That's good to know, though, just so you prepare yourself. But that definitely. Would be rough. But that's cool. Like, and I think a lot of people, I get people that ask me a question, what's your next one? What's this? So that's why I was curious what your thoughts are. Because it's like, you get to a point where it's like, I'll just find something cool. Like you broke your cherry on it. You've got all the tats. It's not that take everybody to the studio to hold hands and watch it type of event for me anymore. It's like,
once you got enough, you're like, sure. If I think it's cute and I like it, then I'll sure throw it on.
And I've always thought it'd be cool to look back, when I'm in 75, almost when I'm an adult. That shows you how mentally ungrown up I am. And just be covered and just be like, oh yeah, that one, that was this. Like, and have,
for sure.
It doesn't have to have a great story, there's that meme that's like, why'd you get that one? Because I felt like it. Like,
absolutely.
I prank people with my little, what do they call these chims or whatever, the little finger ones. I mess with people all the time. I'm like, pizza's for always hungry. This is for love is kind. This is for, you got to keep the ship going. sharks never stop moving, strike first, fear death. And they're like, really? I'm
That's
like,
hilarious.
no. I Googled images. It was like, I like pizza. I want that on my finger.
Yeah.
Like,
that's so funny.
But it's been a gift for me because when I go and work with like high school kids and stuff, they're when the dude comes in the polo and the khakis, I watch them react to the two of us differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's worked out. It was one of those things I was just doing it to do it. And now it's become this like additional thing.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I've seen more positive than negative from it is I see them as like a way to connect, like people connect with you, conversation starters.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've had clients that are in their 70s. So
yes,
getting the first tattoos, which are some of my favorite sessions.
That's
so,
cool.
Yeah,
that's got to
really
be
cool.
really cool for someone that age getting their first one.
Absolutely.
That's got to be neat.
I have a client right now, I believe she's 75. She watches this and she's not, she'll kill me. But she came to me last year with her, she got her second tattoo from me. And then she's come to me almost like every month since.
Wow. That's
so
awesome.
She's got like almost these, patchwork sleeves built up, and we've been able to form like a pretty cool relationship. And
that's really neat.
It's really cool.
That's really cool too, because it's someone at that age, they came up under that stigmata of the tattoos and the stigma of the tattoos being a bad thing. And, those are honestly the clients, like when I go to do bids that want to see my tattoos is the grandmas and stuff. Because I have one stop me. She's like, that's some pretty cool ink. And I was like, well, look at you, Miss Trendy. I just had to stop because it wasn't nice tattoo. It was, that's some cool ink. I was like, wow, somebody's been keeping up on some stuff. You got some grandkids with some tattoos. And she was super cool. She was a fun client to talk to, even though I ended up not painting her house. But it was, I've had more of those. I've had more positive reactions than I've ever had. And I feel like with the negative ones, sometimes when you talk to the people, it's just because they wish they could.
Yeah, absolutely. I try to not, I feel like people project. So, it's never about you. It's always about them.
Yeah, so. No, there's no reason to get flustered by it. I just get a kick out of it or have fun with it, But most of the time I find that people are so interested in it. And it's such a neat experience. Like you said, that you have that connection with that person and you're able to do it. What you said, you listen to the podcast, you're always studying stuff. Is there any kind of upcoming styles that you're following? Anything that your passion is moving you to?
I feel like I'm still, I feel like the more I'm learning, the more I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that.
I would say I'm starting to find, in the beginning when you're tattooing, you're just trying to figure out, how do I pull a straight line and, depth and just the basics. And now I feel like that I have like a pretty good foundation there. I'm trying to figure out, like what my style is and having that kind of emerge. I feel like it's just one of those things there's like nothing you could read or anybody that could give you guidance, it's just one of those things that has to develop. So I think it's just, I've been able to, I guess, find like what I enjoy mainly, what I enjoy, and what I'm just drawn towards, which for me right now has been like black work and, a lot of like stipple shading.
That's cool.
Just like witchy things and all the girly things. I still love traditional and neo. So kind of like everything in that realm I've been able to kind of gear towards right now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now stipple shading, is that little dots? And then that's cool. I've seen some stuff with that really looks neat.
Yeah, I really like it.
It's got to be challenging. Do you find that like the challenge of stuff too attracts you to it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I feel like I'm a perfectionist. So I think that's what used to drive me crazy about my art when I was little. I would have never considered myself an artist because when I looked at my art, it was like, it's not good enough, or you see all your mistakes. So yeah, definitely the challenge of like, I've been trying to get better at being like, okay, that was good, but how can I do it better next time? Instead of just being like,
well, you just can't be.
I hate it.
Up.
Yeah. So it's like a blessing and a curse. It pushes me constantly to keep getting better.
Think they'll ever change?
No.
Yeah.
No.
Me either. I used to think that I'd be like, at some point I'm gonna be like, you know what?
Mm-mm.
I'm just chill. I'm good. This event was good enough. That class was good enough. Like I could teach a class, or everybody like, oh, it was killer. I'm like, yeah, it was. And then I could probably list off 25 things I could have done differently. Tempo, whatever. Like I could pick it all apart. I was picking apart Christmas party we just had the other day, and somebody's like, it was great. Jesus. It sounded like a dumpster fire according to you. I'm like, no, I think it was a great event, but I could have timed this. I could have done that. I had some ideas popped into my head. It's just, but I think that's what makes some people great, is that ability to do that. When I see people that don't operate like that, when they do something, whether it's good or not, and they're just like, I'm happy with that. I'm like, I'm jealous. I'm not. I've never.
Definitely. Yeah.
It's like, that must feel really good to not kick yourself in the ass for an hour now. Okay.
I remember when I first got to Alchemy, I was so excited to work around so many just really talented artists. And coming from like a super small shop, I was like, oh my gosh, let's go. Like I get to talk to all these artists and pick their brains. And that was probably one of the first things I asked all of them was like, okay, so when am I going to learn? Like, when am I going to feel like I know what I'm doing? And when am I going to like start to like my own stuff? And they were like, never. Like, and I was like, oh, okay. It's just part of being an artist. So yeah, I think and I hope I never get content, because like you said, like, I feel like that's just the opposite of like growth and reaching your potential. Yeah.
I think you're always learning. Like you're always, I've been in Taekwondo now 32 years. I've had the school 16. Been teaching for a long time before that, and I'll have a student ask a question. I'll be like, that's a really good way to look at it. And I'll be like, I just learned something. And I've always learned that like the greats that I've been around, the ones that the OGs that are still doing it, still doing good, they have that open mindset. And I think as those people, which we both obviously are, like you will just keep learning and keep getting better and keep improving. There's never, you may, well, I've done it this way and it didn't work before, but what about this way? And then someone's like, well, what about this? You're like, I didn't even think about that. That's interesting. For sure. Like it's just part of growth as a person. I think when you can do that too, you're a much happier person, because you're not walking around with that I know everything attitude. Like you're still able to learn. But it's a fine line too of how much confidence do you have then? Like if you're always like, oh, I suck, I've got to constantly learn. Well, how do you get that confidence there? Like, where does that come into play? Yeah,
definitely. And I feel like that's something I've worked hard to overcome, is just like, your self-talk and like thoughts and mindset, and kind of shedding like just beliefs that I, had that didn't actually belong to me. They were other people that put those beliefs in there. And I'm super big believer in like, what we speak is truth, and speaks it into existence, and manifesting and all of that. And I think that's kind of how I got here. But so I try to be careful, about how I think and
your
how
self-talk
I
means
word
a lot.
things. Absolutely means everything. It starts with you and it starts within. So yeah, just finding that balance of like being proud of yourself, and appreciative of where you're at, and then also that I can do better and I can learn more.
Well, I always talk to people too that if you're not your biggest cheerleader, why would anyone else be? Like if you think you suck, then why would anyone else raise you up? So you have to have that self-talk, and that, like you said, speak it to existence. When I'm working on stuff, I'll work it out verbally, and I know I'll talk people in my life to death about it, and then it happens. And I'll even be like, whoa, it's happened.
Really crazy.
And they do say anything. But I think it's a way of verbally walking yourself through it, putting the processes in line. Like I could only imagine if I'm working with a class and we do a punch incorrectly, it's easy. I can, hey, turn your hand, do this or that. Like with you guys, you're putting something permanently on the skin. So I couldn't even imagine the anxiety that goes into that.
Gosh.
Yes. Yeah. Especially when you're working, you're learning, you're building yourself up, you're talking yourself up. And then, everybody's skin's got to be a little different. Everybody's got to sit differently. Yes. I know I even sit differently depending on when I get tattoos, or sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm really sorry, I'm sitting shitty today. And there's other times it's just like, oh, are you doing something?
Yeah.
You haven't moved. Like,
Definitely. There's a lot of variables that go into it. And anxiety, I mean, that's something I've always struggled with. So that's probably my biggest hurdle in jumping into this, industry. But it was something I really felt called to, and I knew that like I was meant to do. So it was like, okay, I know I'm meant to do this. So I've got to overcome it. So it's helped me do that, which has been cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's a big growth moment too. And I think people forget sometimes. They see people doing stuff and they're like, wow, they're killing it. Like as you continue to grow and you post artwork, some people are like, oh, they're doing great. And they don't realize like this is a you thing. You're building and you're growing and you're working on you at the same time you're working on your work.
Mm-hmm.
Like your artwork is coming better as you're becoming more confident, more comfortable, and you're growing as a person.
Definitely. Yeah. I think it's been like a beautiful, like, alchemy in a way of like, as my art has gotten better, it's like it's poured into me and has helped me heal as I've gone. And it's just been really cool. Yeah.
Well, having that support structure around you and being around those other like-minded people, I think is a huge thing too. I think when you're an artistic person that's on a path and you're constantly surrounded by negativity or just not in the right environment, whether it's at the wrong shop or at the wrong job or in the wrong lifestyle, whatever it is that doesn't fit you, that can take someone that's like that, someone that's at empath, that is that feels that,
yes.
It puts you in such a bad place. I feel like there's times in my life where I've been in situations where everything was not against me and like, oh, the world's against me, I'm going to hustle and break out, but just like the vibes, the people, the atmosphere, it really affects you emotionally. I feel like I was depressed at different times from it. So you having that support group, like you've mentioned Alchemy so many times, I mean, it has obviously made such a big difference for you. Yeah,
definitely. And I feel like a lot of times you don't realize, how people or the environment, whether it's a workplace, friend groups, whatever, are impacting you until you remove yourself from it. And then you're like, oh, you can see things in a different perspective. And I feel like, and the proof was in just the growth I've had since being at Alchemy. I feel like I've gone through huge growth spurts since being there. Yeah.
It's amazing how like your work improves, your work life improves, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, life's getting better.
Yeah.
And then like when things do get thrown at you and there are those curveballs, you're like, I got this.
Oh, for sure.
Whereas things like that at different points in life may have been like,
I feel like for the first time in my life, I have like good problems.
Yeah,
all my problems are really good problems, good problems to have. So I'm thankful for them. But
that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are your goals as you continue to tattoo? Do you ever have, doing big conventions or being on TV or what are your goals with that? Having your own podcast talking about tattooing, writing a book. Where do you see yourself with it?
I plan on going as big as the universe allows me to with it. My heart has always been in pouring into other people and inspiring others, especially women. I have a history with domestic abuse, and so I think my heart's kind of like in that direction, and sharing my story, because there was a time where I would have never thought I would be able to have my own life and support myself and just be doing any of this. So yeah, definitely, podcast was on my bucket list, so I can check that off. I would love to travel. That's kind of like my big thing. I want to travel. I haven't been able to travel since I had kids very young. So I would love to travel all over the world, and definitely conventions eventually. I think I would like to test the waters there.
I almost feel like you got to experience
I'm
that.
kind of pretty open, like mindset person. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of open to wherever it leads me, and to what feels right. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, because it does. It seems like the conventions are, I've talked to several different artists. Everybody kind of has their own feel on them, but it seems like almost like you got to do it once type thing.
It's definitely a different world.
It does.
I've never tattooed at one, but I've attended a couple, and
there was somebody coming up here once in St. Louis, and Casey was going to book me a session, but it would have been what I wanted. And at the time I'd already was doing some art. I was like, I just really didn't have anything on my mind I wanted from that person. I had at one point, she did realistic portraits, colored portraits. And I was like, cool. And then we had seen she's gonna be up here, and I was like, for what I'm wanting wouldn't be really like I don't think it would have worked out. It just didn't fit where I was at that time. But I've always thought it would be cool to get tattooed at one, just for the experience of it. It's got to be completely different. It's just like working one. There's so many things like that. One thing that people realize, I talk to my students about this, getting uncomfortable is how you grow. So you got to put yourself in those situations. We've talked. This is why I'm give you anxiety. You know, I'm proud of you for coming. That's why I was like, she's gonna be here because this is a big thing. This is really cool, and you've done amazing with it. You said that it's something you push your kids to do, so you were wanting to step outside your box. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Absolutely. I feel like we can preach all day long, and say all the things to our kids, but they're going to lead, by our examples. And so I really wanted to show them that, like, it's never too late, to dream big. And I want them to dream big, and I want them to achieve, whatever they want in this life and go after it. And to also just break generational cycles that have been passed down in my family. And just kind of be that first person to break that for them. And
Ed Milet has a thing he puts up, and I'm trying to think of how he phrases it, but it's about breaking generational cycles and doing things for family, and about, he's like, I am him. I am the one that's doing it. And that one, anytime I come across that reel, I share it because it fires me up. And I love that talk about, it's very good. I'm the one that's going to change it. Who's going to do it? I am. And I don't think people realize that most people that push for perfection or push for things to go big or work really hard at it, they think you're greedy. They think you're a workaholic. They think you're a perfectionist. They don't realize that most people have an underlying drive. Like your main, I guarantee there's days you don't want to get up. There's days that you're like, I don't want to do that. But you're working for more than just you and more in tattoos. You're breaking that generation. You're doing that, which that fires you to do more than just, I'm going to go do a tattoo today. Yeah. There's more that drives people.
Yeah, definitely.
And most people look at you and be like, oh, she got her combat boots on, her tattoos, they could put you into a box.
Absolutely.
And then when they hear you on a podcast being like, I'm doing this for my children, I'm doing this to set that example, that is not the box you would be put in right off the bat. I guarantee there are people that see me running around doing stuff with my tattoos and everything, and then they're like, oh, he's a martial artist. He specializes working with kids. Like, huh? Yeah. Like, you wouldn't think that. And that's something I've learned in life, is because I was very judgmental. I'd see people put them in a box, boom, and it's to not do that.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like growing up, like, I never really fit into any box, like I felt like even in high school and stuff, I didn't have like just one little group of friends. Like I just, and that's, I think, been cool about being in the industry too, and connecting with other artists. And it's kind of like just finding your people that have kind of always felt the same way, throughout their life.
You're not the only one.
Yeah. And just breaking the stigmas. Even I feel like as a woman and a mom, and being a tattoo artist, it's not the norm in the industry. Even at the shop I'm at, I think out of, 20 something artists, there's 2 of us, aside from the owner, that is a mom, that is a parent. So, I'm all about just breaking the walls down. Like,
Well, it's got to feel good too, to know that you're doing that and you're not what people are expecting, and you're living up to that. You're holding yourself accountable. that's got to mean something to you that, you're doing it, you're a mom, you're the tattoo artist, you're rocking out, you're doing it. But you have, nothing's been given to you. You've worked for it. You've busted your ass. You've done the things to make it. It's got to give you a sense of pride. And I think when you achieve things like that and you realize that you don't fit that mold or you don't fit into what people think. Like I like that. I like it when I walk in, people are like, you're wearing bibs? I'm like, yeah, I like my bibs.
Yeah.
What's wrong with my bibs? Everybody else got Dockers and polo on. I'm like, all right, dork, whatever. Like, have fun. Like, that's not me.
Absolutely.
I like that. And it was something. Now, when you were younger, did you struggle with the fact that like you had a different fashion sense? You didn't fit into those boxes. Like you had this box and you had this box. Everybody had their box. Cause I feel the same way. I never really fit into one.
I feel like I didn't fit in, but I wanted to at that point.
Well, yeah, everybody.
You know what I mean? But now, like, yeah, I love that I'm different and I love the things that make me me. And I tell my kids all the time, like, be weird. Like, like what you like and own it and don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Because that's what makes you you and makes, you know, the world interesting.
I try to do that when parenting, not they've got something they do that's quirky or that could be weird, not to be like, knock it off. Like, like, you have to wear clean clothes. You can't wear dirty clothes.
Right. There's limits.
Like, there's things they'll do that I'm like, shut up. That makes them them. And I'm glad my parents always did that with me. But I find I don't want them to fit in. I don't want them to, because I've learned as an adult, that's what makes me unique. That's what makes my brand unique. That's what makes me good at the things I do is I don't fit into that box. As a younger adult or a kid or a teen, you want to fit in the box because, okay, then I got these friends and I got this, and then I can have the little white house and the little fence. And then you realize that not fitting in that box, like as you get older, the people in the other boxes sometimes are like, damn.
Yeah.
That must be cool not to be in that box.
Yeah.
That's got to be something that as you're growing, you've got to feel.
And I feel like it boils down to just like operating in a authentic, you're being your authentic self. So if you're not, then how can your people find you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think that's what has been huge for me too in the last 3 years is just finding my tribe of people and like-minded friends and clients and just everything, law of attraction. It's been really just life-changing. Yeah.
And that's got to help you get through too. That's got to help
like
push through, knowing that like every day, like even when you have those downs, you're like, damn, but the ups, they're there.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like I just love, I love what I do so much that even the bad days, it's like, they're not really that bad when you look at them. Yeah.
What would you say to anybody out there, men or women, but mainly girls, wanting to get into the tattoo industry and wanting to follow, like say they just feel that passion to do it? What are tips? What advice you'd give them? Things that you wish maybe you'd have known.
That's a great question. I would definitely say researching the artists in the shop that you are apprenticing at, speak to their other apprentices that maybe they've had, and ask them about their experience.
Do your due diligence.
I feel like more often than not, most artists don't have a good apprenticeship story. So I think that's something that's trying to change within the industry, but it's still the industry is just, it's not like anything else. So it's hard to regulate. So there's still a lot of things that I think need to be, more regulated or more standard. And not every artist, just because they take on a apprentice, what is their motive for taking an apprentice is huge. Is it to just get more money in? There's a lot of, sexual harassment and abuse that happens in the industry with female apprentices. And would they be a good teacher? Not everybody is made to teach. They might be a great, phenomenal artist, but they might not know how to teach that to you. So,
well, I think there's a lot of industries, especially when it revolves around the arts. Martial arts is the same way, where you can just go open a school. Doesn't mean you're going to be good at it. Well, how do you know if they're good at it? Well, it depends on what your knowledge is. If you don't know what good is, you don't know. There's a lot of people that are not very good martial artists that are very successful schools, because you don't know till you know. Once you've been trained for a long time, then you go train with smart people, you're like, oh, that is totally wild. Okay. But there, again, also, you don't know. Maybe they can't teach. Maybe they're wanting apprentices just to sweep the bathroom. They're not wanting to teach you. When I was in the union, we would get painters apprentices come over, or union journeyman that just went journeyman, that had never done anything but tape. They did not know how to paint. What could we do about it? You know, it was because their teacher was terrible. I luckily was taught how to paint very early. So it made a difference for me. I was a third year apprentice. I could outwork a lot of more experienced people because I had a boss that taught me.
Definitely. Yeah.
That's a big thing to look into too. Whenever,
absolutely.
And what are they looking for? What is the atmosphere going to be? You know, I feel like with the arts, a lot of us are broken or a little damaged when we get into it. So you've got to make good choices.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
And go with it. You know, like you said, research it, like where you're at, you absolutely love it. That's been a game changer for you. And,
definitely.
And I had heard about that tattoo shop before you were even there through other friends of mine, that had spoke very highly of it. You know, it's doing your research, looking into things, I think is important no matter what you do. One thing that blew me away is my business, my painting company took off guys that come in. I'm like, well, you know, with the red vans, they'd be like, you guys have red vans? Like, you didn't even look at Facebook. It's our cover photo. Like, it's kind of hard to miss. Did you even Google? Like, how did you? It just popped up on Indeed. Man, wife sent me the info. I'm like, wow. You're gonna like work here for your living? Like, you're not telling me you're actually interested in a long time job. Like, you got to put that work in. You got to figure those things out.
I mean, today it couldn't be any easier, you know, with the internet and everything at your fingertips. So
it's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. So that's great. Well, I appreciate you coming on. How can people find you if they want to book with you, if they want to schedule a session? What's the easiest way for everyone to get a hold of you?
I would say going to the Alchemy website. They have it broken down pretty nicely. So there's 2 locations. There's one in Central West End and then one in South City. So I'm at the South City location. So it'll break down all the artists, and we all have like individual pages off of that main site. So there'll be a form. It's just like a quick inquiry form. It gives me, you know, all the details I need to know about what you're wanting. And then that gets emailed to me. And then I have an assistant now. So that's been like a big thing is to, should
have led with that.
You have to outsource, you know, what you can. And it's been, she's been such a blessing, and she has literally saved my sanity, trying to keep up with everything. So, she's on it. She's super quick. I would say it usually takes her like 2 to 3 days to get back. So she sets up a consultation, either in person or virtually. And then I pretty much will set up the appointment.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Even more growth. That's cool.
Yes, it's taken me a minute to figure out, you know, the best flow of things and how to.
But you probably get a lot of tire kickers with tattoos. Like, hey, what's a butterfly cost?
And people just don't realize the amount of messages. You know, there's Instagram, there's Facebook, and text messaging. And I'm working with Joey, and then we're building out a funnel to automate a bunch of mine for the academy, because there are so many people that reach out, and they have all great intentions, but then keeping a cycle going, because it ends up taking up all this time for then the clients that are actually paying that you need to take care of. We're working on something like that for me, because I could see I get a lot of people, how much paint a door? What door? A door, front door. Well, what's it look like? Can I have a picture of it? And then they ghost you. Like, it's such a bad thing these days. Of back and forth, and it can eat you alive, and then they feel offended if you don't get back. Yeah, and that's what I would really feel guilty on. I'd be like, oh man, they probably think I'm just, you know, some asshole that doesn't care about their tattoo. Page about paint jobs, and then people will be like, well, bro, do you not want to do it? I'm like, oh, you can't message a personal page. That's where all the dojo stuff goes. Like, you got to message the office between the two. Well, I was just telling them between just the Boyer
Academy socials and website and all that, we had 700,000 views last month.
Oh my gosh, that's
like
awesome.
That's great, but the amount of tire kicking and stuff that comes off that, and just simple quick questions, it's not it's not something more than I can handle, but it does get to be a lot. But it did when you were saying that about the assistant. I was like, I bet the amount of like, well, what do you think about this? What do you think? Because like for you and I, if we come up with an idea, we got someone reach out to, I message you, whatever, however it works, and it's over. Like that's it. You know, hey, want this when you got time, whatever. But for those people that are newer or don't know you, I could see that being like, listen, do you want it or not? Because you could add it 5 times over by now. Like we could have did this like 5 times. Like, yeah.
And those are the things that, you know, aren't really taught to you in an apprenticeship.
No.
Is how to, you know, handle clients and streamline.
Well, it's ever
things.
changing.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was something I really had to learn. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on that.
Thank
and
you.
yeah, check out Christa. Amazing tattoos. And we'll have to do like a podcast while you're tattooing me.
That would be cool.
I mentioned that to Joey the other day. Joey was like beating a hole. I was like, that's awesome.
That would be cool. We could do that.
I was like, I'm down to definitely do that. I was like, we'll have to figure that one out. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I'm proud of you because I know this was an anxiety thing and you did it.
Yeah, I did it.
You did ghost me. So awesome.
I didn't die. It's good.
You didn't die. Yeah, it's not that type of podcast. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode.